everyone. It is episode 369 of This is Whole Life, where we go deeper into the messages and the topics that we are discussing at WholeLife Church here in sunny Orlando. Hot, sunny Orlando.
Wonderfully warm. That's what I like to say. Wonderfully warm. I just got done freezing to death up in the frigid north, and
it didn't feel like...
I loved my trip that I went on, but let me tell you, I actually like the heat down here, so I was happy to be back.
I love it. Rio weather is good weather for me.
For the rest of us who were just in North Carolina for a week, we're like, oh man, could we bring just a little bit of this back with us? Yes, please. And then we opened the door.
Some of the rain.
And we opened the door halfway back at the gas station and went, oof. There it is, Florida coming north.
That's what Rochelle said when she came. She's like, oh, wow, I'd forgotten how hot it was. And I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. This is perfect. That's why God created air conditioning.
Well, that's true. You don't just stand outside and suffer. You come inside where it's cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Ooh, and do you hear that, guys? I did. It's a new voice, and this is a first-timer.
Yes, my first time hearing.
It doesn't feel like it should be a first time, though.
It doesn't, though, because when you have a familiar face in the room, it just feels like it's home, right? And you made a big deal about this this past
feel
week.
Like home.
You brought your family. So in case you're wondering who we're talking about, this was episode 4, or the 4th installment of our Voices of WholeLife. Fourth and final. I didn't know. Don't say
Angela
final.
is the cleanup hitter.
It's not final yet until we're done with this podcast. Leave me in my little space here just a little bit longer.
Of importance, right?
I'm not sure how to feel about that, Randy, because what you're saying is you're not ready for me to go back to me preaching. Is that what
I'm not ready to go back to anyone's preaching outside of the voice. This is, and I have said this every year since I've been doing the podcast. So Andy and Jeff, now normally I would give them the week or the month or 6 weeks, however many people we had lined up. I would give them the time off on the podcast. That was their little summer break, summer vacation. Ken took care of that for himself this year.
I did 2 out of 4.
Yeah, 2 out of 4. He did pretty good.
Yeah.
And so this was, and it's Angela, and I cannot.
Conceicao.
Conceicao.
You didn't say it with. I didn't say it with the Brazilian.
No, not at all, Ken. No, not at all.
Well, that was never going to happen. But go ahead and say it with the Brazilian for our Brazilian.
Well, you said it in the color that you're wearing. It's very gringo. Okay, the way you said it.
Gringo.
Oh, I'm wearing a green shirt for those
He's
of you who don't know.
wearing a
But
green
I felt like you were making fun of my pale skin. Is what I felt like you were doing there.
Well, if the shoe fits.
So you would say it Conceição.
Conceição.
Conceição. That's the hardest part, the last part.
Conceição.
Yeah, that's pretty good, Ken.
Ooh, not bad for a white guy.
Yeah, you're going to need a different color shirt.
Add a little yellow there to that green and yellow, because that's the color of Brazil. Yeah, Conceição.
Angela used to be, and technically, I think once you've been a WholeLife staff member,
always a WholeLife.
You're kind of always a WholeLife staff
Yes.
member. So Angela used to be our executive assistant, and this was a little bit before my time before I came aboard. And so, but I used to see Angela's face. We would come in to do the podcast, and how long were you here for total?
A year.
About a year?
Yeah, a year
and then
a little bit more.
And it was like she was
whoa,
done.
she
It was
had to
like,
go.
I gotta find a way out of here.
So welcome, Angela, to the podcast.
Thank you.
And Angela's message was one that I got a text message from Stanton between first and second service. And if you recall, if you were listening last week, you would know that Stanton was here, Stanton Reed, a longtime WholeLife member.
Great guy. Phenomenal speaker.
First time at the pulpit, I think.
He raised the bar like crazy. I was like, how am I going to talk after him?
That wasn't his first time preaching.
No, I don't
I'm
think so.
sure it wasn't.
No.
Maybe. I don't know. It's okay. It's been.
So? I don't think so.
It was the first time during what I've been here 7 years.
Oh, you're talking about maybe here.
During your reign.
No, not preaching total, but here at WholeLife.
Okay, so I can. Yeah, that may be. Because we did have him scheduled to preach, and then something. I think loss of a loved one, actually.
Yep, it was. We talked about it on last week's podcast. And then, by the way, if you've missed it, just scroll down one more episode after you're done listening to this one and catch all 4.
Yeah.
Rochelle was amazing, Pastor Ken's wife, if you haven't heard that episode.
Audrey Gregory.
Audrey was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And Stanton, and he texted me and he's like, this is crazy how the Holy Spirit is moving. He's like, every one of these messages were unplanned. Well, they were planned, but they were uncoordinated, I meant. Mm-hmm. So like you guys didn't talk to each other. And he's like, my message, after I heard Rochelle's, and then I was like, man, mine's going to really fit in nice. He's like, I was feeling good. And he's like, and now Angela just totally put the bookend on this. And he's like, this 4 set of messages just really work together so well together, even though it just was not, I mean, you hope, and they don't necessarily have to work together, but these do.
It's amazing how God works, isn't it? I really believe that God works through all these things and inspired.
And when you have super talented people, it helps. And so here you come, last one in the mix.
But Randy, I would say not just super talented, because they are super talented, but people who are connected to Jesus. And that's one of the big things that we think about when we're asking people to speak is we want them to be able to pass on what they're receiving. And I think that you heard that in all of the talks, is that people just genuinely sharing from where they're at and what they've learned and what God's saying to them. And so I just really appreciate that. And I thought, Angela, that one of the things that I mentioned after you were done on Sabbath to our family was that how much I appreciated just the authenticity and the willingness to be vulnerable. And I think we appreciate that from all the speakers this year. And Angela, we just appreciated you capping it off. It was good.
It was hard to get to that point, but
the process of
like being able to even mention the fact that I wasn't feeling what I was supposed to be feeling. For me, I thought I was supposed to be feeling that way, So it was hard for me to share it. But once I did share it with the 2 people I mentioned, it was God just telling me that I'm going to shorten the path to some people if you open your mouth.
So Angela, just in case there are people who haven't watched the sermon yet, and we definitely want you to go watch it, but you're talking about when you discover that you're expecting your second child.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things that I wanted. I told Randy, I said, I really want to dig a little bit more into this if Angela's okay with it.
Absolutely.
Because were you going through this while you were working here?
I was.
Okay, because I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and that, to me, that was just always that reminder that you don't know what's going on in people's lives that are around you. Because to me, you're always a very happy, cheerful person. And it sounds like...
pathologically positive person.
Yeah. But it sounds to me like at that point, that's not what was really going on inside your head.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I've always been taught, because I've always tried to be positive because I genuinely believe that in the end it'll work out.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes that makes me not want to face things. And then I put on a really beautiful smile. And I love people. I really do. So people and I cover up the hardest things I'm going through. And while I was pregnant, I was working here and I was genuinely happy about this, about working here and being here and sharing life with everyone. But down deep, I wasn't feeling connected to my pregnancy. And I felt like I was just overdoing everything in my life so I wouldn't go to that place and, see what was going on that I wasn't connecting so much with. And my doctor, I told her, I was like, she was also one person I opened up to. And I'm like, I just feel like I'm not myself when I notice I'm really pregnant because I'm not happy about it so much. I'm thankful, but I'm not connected to this. It feels like it's happening, but it's kind of outside of me, but not I'm not really connected to it. And she told me that, hey, if you try to do something bad to yourself, then we're going to have to go into antidepressants because you can't. It's just, you got to see what's going on. But I never felt like I wanted to harm myself or anything like that. And I'd be okay to say if I did, honestly, at this point. And the hard moment for me was I felt like 2 people, I felt like I was, and they were 100% genuine people. It was just like a binary, moment in my life where I was genuinely happy about the moment I was living here at church, but I wasn't able to be extremely happy about my pregnancy the way I wanted to be.
So Angela, this is your second pregnancy.
Yeah.
I mean, in your first pregnancy felt completely different.
Absolutely. So that was my parameter. And I felt like I connected with the pregnancy right away. And that's what I was expecting from this pregnancy.
Because you'd wanted this pregnancy. So this was this something that
it was something I wanted at some point, but I wasn't planning on getting pregnant because I had just started here. So I had just started here, like I was working here for a month or less.
Okay.
And then I just found out I was pregnant. I'm like, this is coming in the way of what I was planning life to be.
So it was a little bit unexpected in the sense that
it was a little.
And so then you found yourself.
Yeah, I found myself not. So the first thought I had when I found out I was pregnant was like, I'm taking away time from my beloved son, Ethan. You know?
Planned on giving him more time for a little bit longer before you added another child.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And like, how am I going to deal with this? How is this going to go about? And it was even harder for me. It is crazy even to think about it now. And I'm so thankful it was a girl. It was like when I found out it was a girl, I'm like, oh, I can't believe it's a girl. You know, because I loved having a boy. I'm like, oh, girl, not the girl in the house. You know, so that was what I felt. It was what came from my heart, and it was scary for me.
And it felt wrong to feel that, right?
It felt so wrong, and I was not able to admit it. And I put on a happy face about it, you know?
Yeah, because that's, I mean, I like I said,
exactly.
I had no idea that you,
exactly.
when you talked about baby names together, you remember coming in talking about that?
And Ken, it was hard even for me to decide on a name because of so much disattachment I was going through. And it was so important for me, and I never told you that, but it was so important for me to have those suggestions because I was like, I don't know how this is. I don't know. I just knew I wanted Amy.
Yeah. What Amy means love, right? Or
exactly. Beloved.
Beloved.
And
nice. This is interesting now because now this is becoming even more interesting because we talked about this. Beloved joy.
Exactly.
Yeah. And yet, but that wasn't what you were feeling.
No, I didn't want Amy. I wanted joy.
Yeah.
And it was what I was wanting at that point.
Interesting.
You know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I wanted to feel joyous because that's my nature, you know? Yeah. I'm not like, down and no, I'm usually very happy and so that's just my personality. But I wanted that.
Was this totally new? Like as far as feelings go, I mean, Rochelle talked about the fact that when Ken was maybe the first person to ask her if she was mad.
Yeah.
And like she'd not really felt that or realized the anger, at least to the degree she had felt it at the moment that Ken asked her. Was this something totally new for you?
Yes.
So it wasn't something, so you were putting all the weight of this on the pregnancy. It wasn't like you had another thing to kind of balance, like, I felt this way before.
Everything else was everything was fine, I was happy where I was, and it was just like, I just need to feel happy. I don't feel joy,
And so what becomes interesting about this, I mean, the whole thing is interesting, but you're an incredibly capable human being. You're a fantastic, I've been blessed to have a lot of really fantastic people that I've worked with through the years, and executive assistants, administrative assistants, and you're top shelf. You're fantastic.
Appreciate that, Ken. Thank you.
And so as I'm listening to your sermon, I'm hearing somebody who I know is top shelf, who I know, I think that one of the incredible things about you is that, and one of the things that I value, when we were working together is that I could come to you and say, I've got this idea, and you'd say, done. And I didn't like have to go, and will you please do this and this and this and this? It was just like, Angela, we're going to have a staff retreat. I'd like to kind of have, oh, no problem, Ken. And then you come back to me with everything mapped out. So the point I'm trying to make is you're very organized. You're very self-sufficient. You know how to take care of yourself. You know how to take care of the people around you. And so what I'm hearing you say in that sermon that I was like, oh, I can't wait for podcasts because I want to dig into this so much deeper, is something that I really relate to. I heard you saying, I have always figured out how to fix what's wrong. Exactly. Because that's my attitude in life. It's like, whatever life throws me, I will figure it out.
Exactly.
I will take care of it. I will get this figured
Resilient,
out.
resistant.
And I know I need God. I know that, but I will figure it out.
Exactly.
And that's kind of...
That's it, and I was just not being able to figure out on my own. And that's where the topic of the sermon came about, when being sufficient isn't enough. Because I was genuinely sufficient, I would get things taken care of, but it wasn't enough. I was not feeling the joy.
Were you surprised when you looked up the definition of sufficient?
I was so surprised.
Because when you read the definition of sufficient in your message and all of the different pieces, in other words, I'm like, oh, that's good. And all these different pieces, into what Ken just said, where I'm the same way. Very early on, my parents were just like, look, not that they didn't provide any guidance or counsel, but like, if you want money, guess what? Go get a job.
Exactly.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
If you want to drive a car, you're going to have to, pay for the gas. You're going to, how do you do it? You got to go get a job. Figure it out. And so in much the same way, I feel like that sufficiency, and yet there's been other parts, and your message made me tear up a little bit. On Sabbath morning, I was in my office. I was glad I was by myself. But feeling the same way that I imagined what you felt when we found out we were pregnant with Emily. And it's just it's nothing that you can prepare for. And it was something where I really did it. You just don't feel sufficient, because now I don't know what to do.
Exactly.
I've never been in this position before. And so immediately my heart went out to you in trying to, but yet the realization of how good it is when God shows you through this. What did you feel? When you look back on it now, how do you feel, and how do you feel it has strengthened you moving forward? Because we've already determined that you were already very sufficient to begin with. How has that increased or decreased or made you better, or how has that worked in your life now that you've got this new idea?
So because I've always had to be, sufficient, coming from a background where I didn't fit in quite well when I was a teenager, because I came here when I was 12 years old to the U.S. I am from Brazil, born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I thought that up to that point that all the good things that I accomplished, not realizing it or realizing it or not, I thought it was like the result of what I did. It was my input in all the different areas in my life. I didn't realize it was that. But then what this situation taught me the most is that everything that is good, perfect. And my favorite Bible verse is Philippians 4:8. And God taught me that I do the work. I am the one who does the good work in you.
I being God, or I being you?
No, I being God.
Yeah,
God
okay.
telling me.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. I'm the one that generates all the good things in your life, and you have got to know this, because you're thinking that maybe you are doing it on your own, and I am the one behind it. I don't show off that I am the one doing it. It's just, what I learned from this situation is that, okay, yes, you are resilient. Yes, this happened. Yes, you are strong. You're capable. Yes, you're all of that. You're a good mom. Yes, but it is my work being done in you that you're able to be all those things. And when I realized that I was not able to produce the happiness of being a mom with that pregnancy on my own, I realized who the real source of everything that is good in my life is. Even though I was never, I'm not like proud, I can do this and I can do that. I'd rather not do that, but like down deep, it was actually what I had in my heart, and I feel like that's what God wanted me to learn from it through the process. He's the one that does everything that's good and perfect. None of us.
How did God show up for you though? In you before maybe the realization sunk in that this was a learning experience, or this was a self-check of what you just talked about. How did God show up and say, make it better?
Yeah. When I tried all the resources I had, my positiveness, my husband telling me, oh, everything's going to work, and I didn't believe him. Me talking to my mom, and I'm like, I'm still not happy. Me being at a great place to work, and I'm still not happy with this that I'm feeling, when all the resources that I thought were like my rock weren't enough. When all my sufficiency, all the places I looked for, forward to getting, approval or, all of that, it did not bring me joy. It was only when I was like, God, just generate whatever, create in me whatever you want me and I should feel, because I don't even know anymore what I should be feeling. And it was when I gave it to him. I'm like, God, help me with this relationship. God, help me build this relationship. And it was after Amy was born. It was not through pregnancy. It was after I saw her. It was through the first month. And that is one of the reasons why I had to be at home too. I needed the time because I was also... I'm also a teacher, so I was teaching, at night when I got home, and it was just too busy. It was just too much for me to handle. I had to give me more time, with her and build that relationship. And it was so hard because, boy, I loved working here. My last day, I was like, I can't believe I'm leaving. I loved it. And that's why it was so hard for me to leave. Yeah. It was so hard for me to leave because I had to give up something I really wanted for something else, for God to work in me. So I needed that time.
But you didn't really want it as much as you wanted what you wanted. That's crazy.
Yeah. And then she did go to she does go to the daycare, but I just needed that. I just needed less in my head, so I could work on it. And it was just God telling me, I'll take care of you on this side. Okay. We're going to work with your business. It's going to be okay. I'll take care of your family, because it was a brave step to take, financially too.
Sure, yeah.
But it was like, I will take care of that, but you need this. You're asking me to do this, so you gotta do this too, So yeah, it was that. Was I clear? Oh, I don't know.
No, that was
that.
No,
did I answer your question?
You did, absolutely.
Because we can go around.
Angela, I appreciate your vulnerability in talking about this experience, because what you're describing, having difficulty bonding with a second child, or a third child, or even a first child, is not something that's terribly uncommon. I think there are a lot of parents who have difficulty bonding with a child, and there's an expectation that we have, no one loves you like your mother, and then of course the terrible saying, that's a face only a mother could love, indicating that there is something in a mother that is love for a child that is the ultimate. And if you are not feeling that, if that's not coming through, then you feel it, it feels like a failure, like
exactly.
you've done something.
I felt guilty.
What is broken in me that I cannot conjure this up? And you and I talked about this a little bit, but just postpartum depression is a thing.
It is.
It's real. And there's help for it. Obviously for you, it was a spiritual process, talking with God, but you also mentioned talking with your doctor and, having support people around you to help you through. And I'm really glad that you were able to take that time and bond with your daughter and build that relationship, because it sounds like it blossomed into something really special.
I don't even have words to describe it. It's like I am so thankful to God for Amy. She saves me in so many different other ways. Like this weekend, just the fact that you have, or for me as a woman, you have a little girl that's looking up to you. I'm an influencer. Yes, not a million people influencer, but I am an influencer. I influence her, and I do Ethan too, but I influence her as a woman that she will be. And
I dare say she influences you back.
Oh,
she's an influencer too.
She is. And it just puts me in a position, to look into myself and see what really is going on. Because sometimes I wouldn't look into these places on my own. Because I love her so much, I'm willing to go places I never wanted to look at before. So that's what love is to me now with Amy. I'm willing to go into places nothing else would take me, So it was, when I say that Amy came to save me from too much of me, it is that, because I had to be too much of me, because I couldn't count on so many other things, while I was growing up. And I was looking too much on me, it's the truth.
But the thing that struck me as well was that God asked you to give up something that was good. Mm-hmm. I mean, most people would say, well, if you're working at a church and it wasn't like he was asking you to give up, a job that you hated, or a job that, didn't, maybe wasn't the best, and maybe it wasn't the best for you, even though it was good. I mean, who knows what God's plan is in total. That's one thing I've learned, probably the same as you, is that influencer part, that once you get past it and realize it was somehow God's plan, even though I don't understand it, and you give up other things for something that you were like, I would never, ever have chosen this in my life. And then, but the benefits that you yourself get, or your family gets, but that sometimes it requires us to give up things that we think are really, really good. There's no monster in the room.
Exactly.
So what do I choose? And that to me is the hard part, because then it's not like it's not even a scale. It just seems like it's all even. Like, why would I have to give this up? And that's the part that I think we get stuck on when God asks us to do things that don't make sense to us, because it doesn't. And it just seems like, well, man, all this is really good. Why would I have to make a choice?
Yeah.
When if you look back at it now, was there a point where you were just like, whew, a relief that maybe you understood, or you found out, like, this is really that God did all this just to get me to be this person? Mm-hmm. Are you happy with this person now that, and was it worth because we always hate it when we're in the hard part, but then when you kind of get past it and go, wow, God's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I didn't realize that it was actually this self-sufficiency. And the problem with self-sufficient people is that they don't realize that they are doing that. Martha, the example I gave in the sermon,
great examples.
Martha, Peter, they really thought they were going to show up. Okay. They really thought that. And it was at one point where my husband, Wagner, was telling me, he's like, have you noticed that you're too self-sufficient even with your friendships? Like, you don't go too deep into your relationships because you think you're enough. He told me that. Ooh. And it was like, oh my word, it is so true. And it is so crazy when you try to, be a good kid, since you're since you know yourself as a person, and you're coming to the realization that I wouldn't want a friend like me if I don't give too much attention to my friendships, you know? It was like, why?
You know, I think it's a cultural thing too, because just like with the mother's love, there are these cultural expectations, I think, in our society. Self-sovereignty is a huge value for us. Mm-hmm. You know, you work hard, you know, Randy, like your dad was saying, you want this, work hard for it and you'll get it. You know, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Even if you don't have boots, pull yourself up by the bootstraps.
Do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that also makes it difficult in our society, even in terms of how we value people who have disabilities or people who there's an expectation of how you should contribute to society.
Yeah.
And there's not really in our society, there's not really that sort of nurturing, if you're breathing, you're worthy. You know, if you're here, you're worthy. There's nothing, and in terms of a relationship with God and how God created you and who you are, you know, there's always this, I have to be something. Mm-hmm. I have to do something. Yeah. And sometimes you need to be able to rest in your insufficiency and rest in your dependency.
Exactly.
And realize that it's okay. It's okay to be there.
Exactly.
That's such an interesting point, because that is such a biblical concept. Self-sufficiency in the Bible is not usually considered a positive. Basically, Christ's sufficiency is what, as Christians, we believe is what's most important. And yet, it is an interesting thing that I think it is cultural. And it's easy to sit here and say, well, I know I'm a very self-sufficient person, and I grew up here in the United States. And Angela, you're a very self-sufficient person. You're born in Brazil. You immigrated, but I think a lot of it may come from, as I was kind of pondering the cultural aspect, I think a lot of it must come from that immigrant mentality that the United States is made up of a lot. I mean, most of us are immigrants here. It may be many generations back, but that, and it is that kind of that immigrant mentality where you show up somewhere where you better figure it out, because nobody else is going to try to help you out. And a lot of times people are trying to hold you down and keep you from it, whether it's the Irish or the Italians or the Brazilians or the Chinese or the Japanese, or all the various groups that have immigrated here have generally been held down by one group or another that had already established themselves. And so you kind of have to fight your way up, and claw for what you need. And it's kind of made the United States kind of scrappy that way. And so I think that is kind of, as we're coming up on 4th of July, something to think about a little bit, is that we really do in this country celebrate people who pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, you know, the people who have fought that. And I don't know that that's all bad. I think, in fact, there's a lot of positives to not saying, well, I can't do it. I think that there's a lot of positives to that, but I do think that it becomes really problematic in my own life where it keeps me from asking for help and admitting that I've got a problem. I remember in the first pastoral district that I was in, it was, taking a super long story, making it shorter, I just got to a point where I was overwhelmed because both churches were big enough and the problems were so big that I with so many people that I just couldn't keep up with all of it. And Rochelle said, well, you need to need to talk to your boss, the ministerial director, and tell him that you're on the edge of losing your sanity. And I said, no, I don't want to admit that I can't do this. I can do it. She's like, you're killing yourself, and maybe you can do it, but what's it going to cost your family? What's it going to cost? And I think probably one of the hardest emails I've ever sent in my life was writing this email saying, I can't do this. I can't figure out how to keep doing both these churches with the way things are at this moment. And what has always blown me away is every time I've done that and I've thought, man, people are going to think I'm so weak, and they're going to, I got this beautiful email back from my boss who said, hey, you do have some issues going on there. I'm so glad you let me know. Let's talk about how we can work on this together. And they came up with a great plan that was very helpful in the long run. But if I'd never asked for it, I never would have got it. And so self-sufficiency often is not enough. You've got to get help from other people. You've got to get help from God. You've got to recognize, that was one of the other things that I recognize, and I keep wondering why I keep having to relearn this lesson over and over, but I remember when you work in radio or television, the reason you have a job is because people watch or listen. Why do people like to listen to some people and not like to listen to other people? Why do they like to watch certain things and not? I could never, for some reason, people would always watch when I was doing the news, and ratings would go up and things would be good. And I don't know why. I couldn't quantify that. And so for me, I've always just had to feel like that had to have been something for me that God had something to do with, because I can't control that. I guess there's certain things you can do to be more likable or not, but I don't know. It's one of those things where you just think self-sufficiency isn't enough. There are intangibles out there that in a moment, everything can change, and you can't now take care of yourself the way that you thought you were. Well, I'm a really good writer and I've worked hard on my presentation. Well, all of a sudden, you see it all the time. People turn on this public figure, that public figure, and they no longer have a platform anymore. They don't have a job. And so I think really that's what really appealed to me about your topic and what you were talking about, Angela, is that I thought it was a good capstone to the whole conversation that we've had over the last month, in the sense that a lot of us struggle with either not asking for help or feeling bad about ourselves because we recognize that we're not doing what we ought to, and we don't know how to say it out loud. And we feel like a failure when we can't do what we, quote unquote, know we should be doing.
Or feeling.
And that one really hit me too, Angela, for you, that we're told that we have to feel certain things, right?
Yeah.
So I should feel sad at this time. I should feel happy at this time. I should feel in love at this time. We're told these feelings, and then when we don't feel them, we're like, what's wrong? What's wrong with me? And the further I'm going, the more I'm having to wrestle with the fact is that I feel how I feel. And that's, if I'm going to be authentic and awesome, I have to own, this is how I feel. And you can judge me for it, but it's how I feel.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to work my way through it, I've got to say, this is how I'm feeling. And then really ask myself, why am I feeling that? What is it that's causing me to feel that? And I read a book maybe a year ago that was talking about emotions at work. And it was talking about how most employers only want their employees to show up with two emotions, and that's happiness and that, yeah, okay, one.
Only
Just
one.
that one.
Yeah.
And so if an employee is irritable or angry or jealous, we tell them, you shouldn't be feeling that. Just be happy and have a good attitude. And this author was making the argument that all those emotions are actually very important. And if you have an employee that's feeling angry, rather than telling them you shouldn't feel angry, why are you feeling angry? There's usually a reason that we feel what we feel. There was a reason why you were feeling what you felt in your pregnancy, and it wasn't right or wrong.
Exactly.
It was just what it was. And for you to be able to dig into that, you had to admit, I'm not happy. I feel down. I feel upset. Well, and the more you try to cover it up, the less you're actually able to heal what's going on, and sometimes just embrace the fact that this is how I feel.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And I think you mentioned that it's very interesting, because I felt that having this happy personality was a reason why I was loved.
Interesting. Yeah.
You get it now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So not feeling like I was loved was the issue for me. And I did not want Amy to feel that way. And that's why it was so hard for me to not feel the love. I'm like, I'm not going to make this girl go through this. And that was a point in my life where I was like, your worth is not in that, Ange. Because that's how I feel God talks to me. He calls me Ange, you know. That's not where your worth is, you know? It's not the fact that you make people happy, that you're capable, that you do things to people, you know? That's my love language. My love language is acts of service, okay? And I feel like, how am I going to service this girl if I don't feel love for her at this pregnancy? How is this going to be about, you know? And it was God telling me too, your sense of worth is not the adjectives people give you, okay? It is because I wonderfully made you. It's because it goes back to, you know, sense of worth you mentioned too, Melanie. It was that too. It was God telling me that love is not because you do anything. It's not because you are anything, because you show anything. But that was where my sense of worth was, because that's what brought smiles, you know, to my family. You know, it was what brought, and I just came off the mic. I'm sorry.
No, you're great.
It was where I saw that love. That's how I felt loved, you know? And the reason why I told that in the pulpit is that WholeLife Church will never understand how much the staff will never understand how much they played a part. And God telling me that message specifically is that your worth is not because you do these things. It was because in that staff meeting, I was able to open up about something very particular of me. And Ken opening himself up to, you know, something that was very particular to him. I'm like, and then I realized it was God starting the sentence. I love you not because you are anything, or because you did not do anything, or because you're not feeling anything, or you are feeling this, or there is no reasoning to my love. I love you because I am love. That's what I know. That's my essence, you know? And it was that too, you know, that realization that my sense of worth is not in anything I'm able to do or not do, feel or not feel.
Well, it's hard too, because once you, even in a family setting, once you have an expectation of who you are within the family hierarchy, you're the person that makes everybody feel good and makes them smile.
Exactly.
You know, you're the person that, you know, throws down the law when it needs to be done. So that's what, you know, you're the person that, you know, is the breadwinner.
Yeah.
You're the person that does this. And we all have these little titles that we give each other. But over time, we all change. If we haven't changed, we haven't grown. And if you're not allowing, or someone's not allowing you to move on from your position, even though that probably Angela is still the person that makes people smile. She's still the person that gives the warm and fuzzies to people in the family. It doesn't, you know, like, they have to realize that you have to be allowed to grow and to maneuver through those. But that's also hard from the other perspective, because, well, I don't know what to do for you.
Exactly.
Or how do I stay out of the way? Do I offer advice? How do I walk alongside you when I don't know, just like you don't know, what's this other piece that's being, you know, slowly revealed or peeled away like the onion? And I think that's where a lot of relationships have that same problem of how do we navigate where we are if we don't really see, or if one of us that's changed doesn't even know we've changed. We know there's something wrong, but we don't know what it is. I mean, I think that's a piece that we can, if there was something that was specific, or, you know, how do you feel you made it through that process? I'm sure Wagner's awesome. So I'm sure he was right there with you. Was it just being persistent, listening? How did it help you
It was just like listening to what was going on. You know, it was just like being open to listening to what God wanted to teach me, you know, and it was like accepting the fact that it's okay to feel that way. And Wagner was very helpful, because even when I'm, you know, just stressed out, he just keeps his cool. He's just he
always seems just chill and cool.
Chill.
The ultimate bass player.
Well, there's that too.
So chill. I've never seen. I mean, it's just. I'm telling you, I don't know how he does it. And he's like, everything, it's okay. It's okay to feel that way,
Yeah.
And I felt that was God telling me in all the different areas in my life at work, it's okay if you're vulnerable. I was very vulnerable before. I would not open up the way I did, okay, in the pulpit. But it was like, it's okay to be vulnerable. The right people will love you the way I want them to love you, okay? And it's okay if you don't live up to the expectations,
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It's okay, okay? Your sense of worth is not there. And it was just accepting that. And it was God telling me in all the different areas of my life that you do not need that much acceptance. But it's not like people were not accepting me. It was just me thinking that would happen, And it was a process. So there wasn't really an aha moment. It was just me, slowly understanding that and accepting the fact that, he's going to do, if whatever we need or not to feel, it's just give yourself, to the process of me taking care of you.
Well, I mean, after you survived the great rubber band incident.
And oh my God. Yeah.
I was just thinking that
let me mention that too. That's a good one I wanted to point out. The feeling of that's why I even mentioned it, in the sermon, is that it was the moment where I let people down let me go a little deeper into it. Okay. 12 years old, 7th grade. The school was Boca Raton Middle School, 7th grade. And ESOL class, my peers were all immigrants. My mom always had, she would always tell me that you cannot get a detention because, immigration will look at us. And we were undocumented. And immigration will look at us, and then we're going to go back to Brazil and,
But no pressure.
No pressure, of course,
of course.
I mean, you're 12 years old. You don't do anything ever wrong, And then everybody was just playing around. The teacher had left the room, and then my friend, I'm not going to say any nationalities, okay, because I do not want to go into nationalities, Ken. And
I don't understand. Why am I getting called out?
Eventually, we're going to launch a pre-show that you guys can be a part of, but not yet. Not yet.
Wait till there's a new senior pastor.
So my friend, a guy friend, another student, and he would just got a rubber band, and he would just fold the paper, and it would just throw at people, and it looked
I know exactly.
So
we used to do that all the
fun.
time.
Oh, yeah.
It looked so much
zingers,
fun.
right?
Yeah.
And here, I thought it was boring. I never did anything fun, because I had to follow the rule. It's boring. So I'm like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try it. And then I get one rubber band and one piece of folded paper. And then I just get it and I just, bam, the teacher. And then I just,
Sure.
you don't really know how to do bad things, if you don't practice it a lot when you're 12. So
for all those 12-year-olds out there listening right now.
And then I get the rubber band and I just, bam, throw it at the door. Long and behold, the teacher, it was like a slow motion moment. It goes straight into her face.
Oh, no.
And then she has those eyes, and she looks at me, not you, Ange. Not you. And then it was in that moment where I felt like I never want to disappoint anyone ever in my life. I just disappointed. They are going to call immigration right here. Tomorrow we're going back to Brazil. And I felt like, all the disappointments from my parents and it was just,
You felt it real.
I felt it real. Yeah, very intense, and it's, sometimes we don't realize, like, kids, if they're crying, sometimes it's like it comes from down deep in their soul. Sometimes it's just a tantrum, but no, other times it's, you got to ask, that's one thing I learned. What's going on? How are you feeling? Why is this bothering you so much? Where is that cry coming from? You don't cry this way often,
Yeah.
One thing I learned with my kids is to ask questions, and when I felt the way I felt in the pregnancy, if I felt like I was disappointing myself, like I was proud to be a really great mom, a loving, great mom, clicked, right there and then with my first pregnancy. And it felt the same way. I went back to Ange, the 12-year-old that disappointed.
Isn't it weird how we connect some of those things sometimes? And how it happens, I don't know.
And like when that point, when I was 12 years old, I didn't hear that, hey, we make mistakes. It's all right. I love you. It's okay. You make mistakes. It was just like, you're the reason to blame. Okay. For us going back to Brazil. So I feel like it was very traumatic, and it felt that way. I'm like, oh my goodness, this girl will go through a hard life because her mom will not be able to love her. And I felt like it was not going to be generated. I was not going to feel it because I wasn't feeling it. And I thought alone I'd be able to make that happen. And that's when, again, we go back to, being able to generate the really, good things is the work of God. It was the work of God in my life. It was him telling me that again, and that because you are not the one to create all these good things, okay? Sometimes you are not going to feel it, and it's okay because you're a human being. Yeah. You're not going to be perfect. You don't know, So, it was a little bit.
Well, I'm thankful that you found people to talk to, and I thought it was really something that I also wanted to make sure that we talked about on the podcast, at least briefly, was Stephen ministers here at the church that are trained to listen and to let you kind of work through these things. And my wife was one when we first started here, and I noticed in her just an ability to listen that she hadn't had before, and what a blessing it is for people who have used that program to help themselves and allow themselves to be helped. And it's something that we provide here at the church. And so you can send an email to Stephen Ministries
absolutely
at WholeLife.church, and you can get some help if that's just someone to talk to and someone to listen, because it sounds like that was the beginning part of God working this all out for you.
Yeah. One day I was like, here, I already had Amy, and I was just, doing my things, going about. And then Carla, I think she's okay to, if I already said her name.
You're in now, Carla.
Are you okay, Carla?
I'm sure she is. And I was just talking to her, and then she looked at me and she asked me, how are you doing, Ange? How are you doing, in this transition? And I just open up like, oh my God, somebody's asking me. Somebody at somehow, I don't know how, why, she was just, and people would ask me, how are you doing? How are you feeling? But I felt like she looked like right in, and I knew other people really intentionally did want to know how I was feeling. It was just, I wasn't ready to open, up. And then I tell her, it's been hard. It's been hard, And I was just like, I was a mess at that table. I'm like, I'm not going to ever stop crying. I'm never going to stop crying. It has started. And she just looked at me and she's like, that is so deep, Angela. It's so important that, so I'm sure so many people go through this and they don't open up, and they don't just, they just think there's something wrong, and there's nothing wrong. She would tell me, there's nothing wrong with what you're feeling. And it was just me, and like it connected me when you said Stephen Ministry, because that was what she did to me over there,
That's great. That's great.
Sometimes it only takes just telling someone that you trust and that you are comfortable sharing this with, you know. And it was at that moment where I'm like, I make sense that, they all connect now. It's okay.
Yeah.
To feel this way,
Well, and I think that after hearing your story, I want to get to, we did have a comment from the chat. It was from Anonymous, and they said, "Thank you, Angela, for your words today. We sometimes define ourselves by our title, like mom, dad, CEO, pastor, etc. And we forget we are children of God first, and if we partner with him, we are sufficient enough." And so
exactly.
I don't think there's, this is a vulnerability, just like someone talking to you, or them, Carla, asking you, like, is it okay, and you feeling okay to answer. And I felt like on Sabbath there was such a rawness to what you were talking about that people were like, "Oh, I'm not putting my name down to ask a question because I don't want to."
Yeah.
Also, I don't want to maybe say the wrong thing, but I think
it's hard.
It just felt like there was a silence, an unsaid silence in the room, that a lot of people were in their own little areas going, "Yeah, this is probably something I need to think about, or I need to talk to someone about." And so we would just I would just encourage someone, if you're here and you're local, please do reach out to the Stephen Ministers team here. There's a bunch of really, really great people that, they're waiting for someone to come that needs their help. That's what they've been trained to do, and it's confidential. And it's, I just personally know people who have later come and said how blessed they've been from it. So
and
take advantage.
I made a point to mention to people, and I'm okay to compliment, if it's true. And I made a point to tell everyone that you guys be thankful to the church we're in, because it is very rare to have people, that are genuinely willing to listen and accept you by who you are.
Yeah.
It was what I looked for.
Yeah.
No,
it's true.
And it sometimes you got to say it out loud from a different voice, that is not the pastor. Because the pastor, they would think, maybe that's what he's supposed to say. He's supposed to say that,
Ken doesn't always say what he's supposed to say.
They're supposed to be nice.
That's fair.
They're supposed to be saying that.
Sure.
But is it truly what happens, behind?
Well, and as a staff member, I'll just say that I appreciated your shout out.
Yep,
as
for
a
sure.
staff, that just that was very meaningful to us too. Because
and people need to know it. We cannot take this for granted.
Okay,
people.
so
okay,
Angela,
we cannot.
Did you send your Venmo over to me earlier before that?
I have not, but I got the text. I'll send it over.
Make sure
He's taking your Venmo.
Yeah.
Well, don't forget.
And it is true. Sometimes when you work, for anywhere, not just church, you don't want to see people during the weekend. You're at the mall and you're like, oh.
Duck.
Just, yeah.
We've all been there.
But no, that's not how
Thanks a lot, Randy.
I'm speaking for me.
I'm talking about me. I don't know the other staff members, okay?
Well, I can tell you, one of the things I was taught, I went and did an interview with somebody famous and came back and was like, "Man, that's so disappointing. What a jerk." And my boss is like, "Yeah, never interview your heroes." She said, "It is so," and so it's one of those things where when you like somebody, you just hope that they are who you think they are. And so, Angela, thank you for thanks for the words of affirmation, because we really want to be who we say we are. We want, I love the fact that it's that was the other thing you learn is don't ever work at a restaurant that you want to eat at or that you really love, because when you see how the food is made, you may not want to work there again or eat there again. And so for me, it was really meaningful that you were at a place where you enjoyed the food and you enjoyed seeing how it was made too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That was meaningful.
And just thank you overall for your message. It couldn't have bookended this whole series better. And to have one of our own to finish everything up was really meaningful. And I just would encourage anyone listening that if you missed the message, you can swipe up in today's show notes. You can catch Speaking of Grace, our sister podcast. The link is right there, and you'll be able to catch Angela's message. If you go to WholeLife.church, you'll see it right there on the front page up until next week, when that will be replaced, unfortunately, but you can always go back in the archives. It'll be replaced with a new series.
That's right.
And it's the Chosen series, and it's episode 1, right? I have called you by name.
That's the one.
That's what I've heard.
Yep,
Okay.
season 1, episode
and
1.
Everybody should show up at 7 p.m., room 305, WholeLife Church,
On
to
Friday
watch
night.
that first episode. If you're like me and you've watched it 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 times before,
It's still good.
that's okay. Watch it with friends. It's you always see things differently when you're sitting next to your family. So,
And if you're new here, room 305 is on 3rd floor,
yep, just take the elevator to the 3rd floor
or take the stairs. Oh, you were
Or-
gone. You
or
don't
the
even know.
stairs.
You don't even know.
with the elevator out.
Yeah, I was with me in it.
Oh,
I got trapped in the elevator for like 45 minutes. They had to call a tech to come get me out.
The things you'll do to get out of having to.
No, I felt guilty. I actually got my laptop out, and I'm like, I wonder if there's enough Wi-Fi in here. I feel like I should be working.
Wow, Randy, that's
Yeah, I
You're
did.
motivated to get your
All
steps
right.
in now, aren't you?
Well,
Yeah, no, I've been taking the stairs. I mean, just word of warning, it works most of the time, so I wouldn't really worry about it. And there will be someone here that knows how to open the door, so
wow, that's a big promise.
yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's technology works. It's great when it works, right?
But 305, yeah, this it's Friday night, and every Friday night for the next 6, 7, 8 weeks. I can't remember.
Yeah,
Something
2 months.
2 months.
July and August.
It's wonderful. I can't wait.
So-
Friday night hangout.
I'm already hoping my episode made it into the final cut.
Which one is yours?
Number 2, season 3, number 2.
Is that the
And when I just watched it on Friday night again.
is that the healing one where
with little James?
James asked why he wasn't
Yeah.
healed?
Did that make the cut?
It made the cut. And I want you to know something too. That for those of you who aren't familiar with The Chosen, it's the first TV series on the life of Jesus, and I think they're taking 7 seasons to do it. So far, they've gone through 3 seasons. Our staff picked out their favorites, and then I might have put my thumb on the scale a little bit here and there.
Maybe.
But what we did is we really stuck mostly to season 1 and 2, and we only have 1 episode from season 3, which is yours, Randy. And I was kind of happy to keep it that way because I think that there are some people who might not have made it through season 3, so it gives them a chance to
Get caught up.
But most of the episodes come from season 1 and 2, and the sermons will be based off of the, but they might not necessarily go in the same direction and everything. So we just basically take the starting point of that particular episode, and like this particular week, the scripture is Isaiah 43:1, which is what the episode 1 really kind of begins and ends with, which is basically God says, "O Jacob, but now, O Jacob, the one who created you, hear, O Jacob, the one who formed you. Fear not, for I am with you." And when you go, and then verse 2 and 3 talks, when you go through the waters, I'll be with you, and you go through the fire. And just a quick little preview: water and fire, purifying agents. So anyway, so basically, I'll be talking about that text. Will be the main focus of the sermon, but we'll also kind of talk about it in the context of Mary Magdalene, who's portrayed in that first episode, and what she goes through. And it's an interesting thing that the chosen are not perfect when they're called.
feels like a continuation.
I know,
of
right?
Voices of WholeLife.
I know.
We try to do that. So
It's like there's planning or something that goes
Right?
into it. Yeah, anyway. Well,
Someone is planning all this,
So you're not going to want to miss it. We'll be back next week as always, and hopefully Jeff will be able to join us next week, and we'll be back on track. But one more thank you, Angela. Thank you so much for wrapping
thank
this
you.
all up. And man,
Thank
we
you
gotta
for
wait
having me. Love you guys.
We got to wait a whole nother year before we have our next Voices of WholeLife.
but I'm already thinking about speakers.
Are you?
Really?
Melanie and I are already thinking about it.
Ooh, I can't wait to find
sweet.
out the
We've
list.
got
Watch
thoughts.
And if you get a text, it's not to the wrong person.
Oh.
Or if it was, maybe God wanted it to be that
maybe.
way.
Right.
That's
But in
true.
Angela's case,
It was
went
you.
where it was
Ken, I'm
intended.
telling you, Ken. I'm like, Ken, okay, he probably texted the wrong person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad he texted the right person and that you said
And I did
yes.
say no, right, Ken?
You did? You
I
told me
did
no.
say no. And then I looked at Wagner and he's like, oh, you got this. You're supposed to do this. And then
Thank you,
I text,
Wagner.
you know, I
you.
text Ken back. I'm like, you know what, Ken? I'll do it. So,
I was surprised you texted back. I've learned the hard way over time that I don't push people to do it. So when you said no in the lobby, you said, oh, well, that's too bad because I really liked you. You said, no, I don't know. And I was like, okay, well. And so when you text me back, I was like, oh, I didn't even have to twist her arm.
Now,
That's awesome.
the only thing that could make this episode better would be just a real one of Wagner's smooth, slick bass lines just to
you
roll
gotta,
us out.
You got to meet Wagner. You guys.
No, I love
He's-
that's it.
He's
I
awesome.
got to stop
Yeah.
saying
He's
it.
the
I got to
guy.
stop saying it.
He's the guy. That's okay.
No, that's all right.
We're gonna
good with
think
We're in
that.
a
I'm
mutual
like,
admiration
oh.
I bet
society.
you could go.
That
I bet you
wife,
could
you
go
know.
find one of Wagner's
Yeah,
smooth
I'm gonna
bass
have
lines
to.
to put at the end.
I may have to. We may have to drop by here one day and just drop a few down for me that I can use periodically here. I think
That's
that's
a
We
great
could
idea.
spice up our
Yeah.
intro
Yeah.
and outro music.
Well, maybe Philip does. Philip Burks wrote and produced our theme music for Speaking of Grace.
Oh, that's awesome.
and so maybe we should have Wagner redo our song. I'll talk to him.
I'm
about it next
sure
time I
he
see
will
him.
do it. Trust me.
All right, here we go.
I'll make him do it.
Will you put in a good word for us at least? Put in a good word for us. At
It
least.
sounds like it's done to me.
It's
All
done.
right. Well, guys, thank you for listening as always. We'll see you for The Chosen next week. So in the meantime, have a fantastic week.